Last spring marked the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe and the liberation of the last remaining Nazi concentration camps. It might feel nearly a century later as though there are few Holocaust survival stories left to tell. But then we found this one. It begins with three young women who were married and newly pregnant in 1944 when they were sent to the notorious death camp Auschwitz, then assigned to work as slave laborers in Germany. With pregnancy an offense punishable by death in the camps, the story of how these three women managed to deceive their Nazi captors and give birth to three tiny babies, who are now 80 years old, involves narrow misses, seemingly impossible twists of fate and luck, unimaginable suffering, and miracles. Everyone keeps calling you the babies. Yes. And you're 80.
Yes.
Are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. We're proud of it.
Totally.
Eva Clarke, Hana Berger-Moran, and Mark Olsky are among, if not the, youngest survivors of the Holocaust.
April 12th.
April 20.
April 29th.
Born in April 1945, just before Germany's surrender in May. At the time, they were Nazi prisoners, but their story begins long before that, when Eva's mother, Anka, from Czechoslovakia, Mark's mother, Rachel, from Poland, and Hana's mother, Priska, also from Czechoslovakia, were young Jewish women in a world that was about to be shattered.
My dear late mother grew up in a small town, and her parents were owners of a little cafe, little Jewish cafe.
She had 8 siblings.
Mark's mother was from a textile manufacturing town. Eva's from east of Prague.
She was a champion swimmer, junior backstroke swimming champion of Czechoslovakia.
For the whole country?
For the whole country, yeah.
Wow. And they each fell in love with their husbands as Europe was descending into war.
My late father was a journalist.
How did they meet?
They met, I believe, in a nightclub across the crowded room.
She avoided going into details. She talked about things.
Mark's mother never told him much about his father, but she did speak of him to Mark's son, her grandson, Charlie.
She told me that I looked like him. And I said, really? And she said, but that's it. He was so elegant. You're nothing like him.
But soon after the newly married couple moved into their first apartment in Warsaw, German soldiers came one morning and seized it.
She was still in her nightgown. She said she still had her toothbrush. And she was just sent into the streets.
They took my grandparents in 1942, my aunt in 1943.
As the Nazis occupied Poland and Czechoslovakia, Jews were rounded up in ghettos and sent to camps. Mark's parents spent much of the war in the Warsaw and Lodz ghettos. Eva's were sent to a Czech camp called Terezin, where she was conceived in violation of camp rules.
To become pregnant in a concentration camp was considered a crime by the Nazis.
For a Jewish person to get pregnant was a crime?
A crime because, they were trying to murder, they were trying to annihilate every member of the Jewish people.
By mid to late 1944, the killings had accelerated. Remaining ghettos were liquidated, and all three women, newly pregnant, were loaded from different cities onto packed freight cars headed for Auschwitz, Hana's mother alongside her husband.
They were sitting in the train on the floor, and my mother is saying, if it's a girl, it's going to be Hana. If it's a boy, it will be Michael.
This is on the train to Auschwitz?
On the train to Auschwitz.
Did they know anything about Auschwitz?
Oh, they did. They already knew those were death camps.
The arrival platform at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp was a place of unimaginable cruelty. Families were ripped apart, with most, including mothers with children and the elderly, sent straight to death in gas chambers that at their peak murdered 6,000 people a day. The lucky few selected for work, including the three women, were stripped, shaven, and sent to overflowing barracks. Did your mother ever see your father again?
Once, about a week after they got there, she saw him across the barbed wire fence, and my dad said to her, "Be careful and think only good thoughts." Think only good thoughts. He just kept repeating that sentence.
And that's the last time they ever saw each other.
Yeah. I wish I would have known him.
Prisoners endured frequent selections, some by Nazi doctor Joseph Mengele, known for his gruesome experiments on camp inmates.
When Mengele came by,
She met Mengele?
she did. And Mengele is looking at her. She's standing in the line with other women,
Yeah.
unfortunately naked. And he looks at her and says in German, "Good-looking woman, are you pregnant?" And my mother says, "Nein, I'm not."
Each of them at that moment had to decide whether to confess that they were or to deny it, whether that would save them and their unborn child or not.
Author Wendy Holden has studied Auschwitz and written a book about the 3 babies and their mothers.
Each of them sensed that they were in the presence of great danger, and they each denied it.
All 3 women lie to Mengele, and all 3 women get sent to a slave labor camp in Germany.
Freiburg, Saxony, yes.
Did the 3 ever meet?
No, and they never knew about each other. It was so important that they didn't reveal their pregnancies.
They were among more than 1,000 women prisoners working 12-hour shifts in a massive converted porcelain factory manufacturing parts for German fighter planes.
Living on really diet of water, ersatz coffee in the morning and thin soup and maybe a tiny piece of bread every day.
How did they hide their pregnancy?
They were given, each of them at Auschwitz, clothing from those who'd been gassed. And they each of them fortunately ended up with baggy dresses.
During the 6 months she was there, she was becoming progressively more and more starved and more obviously pregnant. But fortunately, none of the Germans realized she was pregnant, because had they done so, they might well have sent her back to Auschwitz to be killed.
But by the early spring of 1945, the Allies were advancing. Auschwitz had been liberated, and plans were being made to get rid of the slave laborers.
The Germans decided they had to eradicate the evidence, and they were going to send them to be gassed and just kill them all.
They knew they were losing, the
Yes.
Germans. They knew that the Americans or the Russians were going to come in.
Yes.
And they did not want them to know how badly they had treated these people.
Very much so. And also, there was no more work. All the materials had dried up. They weren't really even feeding them anymore.
That's when Hana's mother went into labor on the factory floor.
On a plank that was put across a table. And the guards watched, and they took bets on whether it was going to be a boy or a girl.
The guards watched the
Yes.
baby being born.
Yes.
My mom said it was like a show. And I said, "Mom, were you embarrassed?" "I didn't have chance to be embarrassed. You were being born. That was all that mattered to me."
36 hours later, the slave laborers and newborn Hana were loaded onto the same train.
This time it was in open coal wagons, so open to the skies and filthy.
This was the death train.
It was the death train. They were looking for a camp where they could kill all these women.
She said it was a nightmare of a journey.
16 days on the train.
No food and hardly any water.
She's 9 months pregnant, effectively.
Yes. And at one point, the train was stopped and the doors were opened and a farmer walked by and he saw my mother and he had such a shock. My mother described herself as looking like a scarcely living pregnant skeleton. And this farmer brought her a glass of milk. She maintained that saved her life. Who knows?
My grandmother, in the meantime, had gotten so ill. She was under 70 pounds and 9 months pregnant, and they put her in the sick car.
Did people die in this car?
Yes.
I mean, they literally threw them off the train.
Yeah. She was lying down, and there was a woman with a bad leg, and she had to put her leg up on her pregnant stomach because that was the highest place in the train to rest it.
So she's surrounded by dying people and gives birth with a woman's foot on her stomach. I mean, this is beyond inhumanity.
Yes. somehow she gave birth. She didn't think she would.
She thought she was going to die.
And she figured she would have given birth to a dead baby, that her body couldn't sustain it. But he was alive, and she figured, but I won't have milk. But she did.
She learned the date was April 20th.
Somebody announced on the train, it's Hitler's birthday today. And so that was his birthday.
You were born on Hitler's birthday?
Yes.
After 9 more days on that train, they reached a camp in Austria that was meant to be their end, Mauthausen, one of the last camps standing. Eva's mother went into labor just as the train arrived.
She had to climb off the coal truck, unaided. She had to climb onto a cart because the prisoners who were not strong enough to walk up the steep hill to the camp, they had to get on carts and they were pulled up by others.
I think I would give up. I'm sure I would give up.
Well, that's what I used to say to my mother, that I would have given up at the first hurdle. I would have collapsed. She said, you have no idea. She said, you just don't know what you can withstand until you have to. And she said, unfortunately, most people are not tested.
She was hauled up through the wooded valley.
While she's in labor?
While she's in labor.
Oh, my gosh.
And she remembers looking back. You look down onto the River Danube. It was April, so there were blossoms and birds singing. And she said she thought it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen, and she also thought it would be the last thing she'd ever see.
But it wasn't the last thing she'd see for a stunning reason. The last day the gas chambers at Mauthausen were used was the day before.
On the 28th of April 1945, the Nazis had run out of gas.
So wait, you arrived one day after the gas ran out.
So had the train arrived on the 26th or 27th, none of us would have survived.
Every little tiny factor of this story is amazing.
Yes, well, I call them the miracle babies, and with very good reason.
Miraculous, too, that they managed to survive at Mauthausen for almost a week. Baby Hana with infected sores all over her body until finally help arrived.
My mom, she saw a little green army car and music. Roll out the barrels. Roll out the barrels. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And she said, this is not German.
She
And
knew
she's-
the song?
Oh, yeah. And suddenly, young soldier with a helmet, Red Cross on it, comes walking by. And my mother says to him in English, I have something to show you.
That something was Hana.
He said to my mother in English, I'll get the doctor because your baby needs help. And he ran and brought the doctor. They took me.
Wait, they took you off and left her without you?
Yes,
And she let them do that?
yes, she did. She trusted them. And the next day, a nurse came, me wrapped in bandages, and my mother says, is she dead?
Oh.
And the nurse said, no, she's not. She's sleeping.
Hana's mother never forgot that young American medic who saved her baby's life. And it turns out that medic never forgot Hana either.
He always mentioned, I wonder whatever happened to the baby.
Really?
Yes.
That part of the story when we come back. The heroism of American fighters in the fierce battles of World War II is legendary. But for some of those young soldiers, among their most searing wartime memories were what they witnessed after the shooting stopped, when they entered Nazi concentration camps as liberators. One of those camps was Mauthausen, a fortress-like compound high on a hill west of Vienna, where more than 95,000 prisoners died, and where 3 babies and their mothers arrived on April 29, 1945. 6 days later, a small unit of 24 soldiers from the 11th Armored Division of General Patton's Third Army was checking bridges in the area when they came upon the camp almost by accident. A warning, the images of what they found are disturbing. One of the soldiers that day was a 22-year-old medic from Illinois named Leroy Pete Peterson. This is the scrapbook that he kept.
This is one of a couple.
Pete Peterson was drafted into the Army in 1942.
My dad was a humble man. He always had a smile.
Brian Peterson is Pete's youngest son.
All right, here's the gasket.
He and his two sons have been rebuilding an Army-style Jeep that used to be his dad's.
Grandpa's he'll be smiling at us.
Peterson lived through a Jeep explosion.
That is the exact time.
When the Jeep was blown
That's when the Jeep was blown up.
Survived. And fought in the Battle of the Bulge before his unit liberated Mauthausen. He suffered years later from PTSD. Do you think it was from the battles, or do you think it was from the camps?
From the camps. The smells and the sounds and the sights that bothered him.
This official U.S. Army photo of Americans liberating Mauthausen captures the joy of prisoners finally being freed. But the photos Peterson kept in his scrapbook show a far darker reality. He took these?
Yes.
Oh. Piles of emaciated corpses. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And in this photo, a man who died right in front of Peterson's eyes.
Yes.
Look at this man.
Just skin and bones.
Peterson's job was to triage which inmates could be helped when he came upon a shocker outside one of the barracks.
A woman presented her baby to him and showed him that she was badly infected.
And he's now just seen all these dead bodies, and there's a baby.
This one we have to try to save.
Peterson told Brian that he and the unit doctor used penicillin, brand new at the time, to treat the baby's wounds and helped sew her up. He never got the incident out of his mind.
Literally, every time that we looked at this book, that was his final thoughts. I wonder whatever happened to that baby.
In the weeks after liberation, that baby and her mother, like many freed prisoners, traveled back to their hometowns across Europe in hopes of finding living family members. And in Mark's, Eva's, and Hana's mother's cases, their husbands. Sadly, all three men had died. While Mark's and Eva's mothers later remarried, none of the women had other children. So Mark Olsky, Eva Clarke, and Hana Berger-Moran grew up as only children, learning about the war in bits and pieces from their mothers.
I was told that I was born on a train, but no details, and so I thought, oh, hey, cool, I was born on a train.
But as he learned the truth, he became enraged.
When I was 12, 13, people asked me, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to go to Europe and just kill as many Germans as I can. Yes.
He vividly remembers his mother's response.
In almost the exact words, she said, they took so much from us. If this is what you become like, they will have taken your soul.
Oh, she said that to you? Wow. Hana's mother raised her in Czechoslovakia, but as an adult, Hana moved to Israel, then to the United States for graduate school. Her mother sent her off with a request. Try to track down that young American medic.
And she says, please find him.
Find him?
Find him.
How were you supposed to do that?
I didn't know his name.
She discovered it was the 11th Armored Division that liberated Mauthausen and sent them a letter.
I was getting various messages, this name, that name. I got in touch with them. Oh, no, it's not me. And finally, I get the message, oh, you want to talk to Pete Peterson.
Peterson was 81 at the time.
Dad mentioned that he had heard from a woman that he believes is the baby that he saved at Mauthausen.
Oh, my God. They met in May 2005, 60 years after their first meeting.
I was so happy to finally touch him, see him.
He was actually staring and looking at her.
I saved that person.
That's you, that's really you. And I was able to thank him, finally. Truly thank him. Because he saved my life. He did.
Do you think knowing that she survived helped with the PTSD in any way?
Oh, absolutely. That lifted a big weight off of him.
And I asked him if I can call him Daddy Pete.
Daddy Pete?
I didn't have a father, so he became my daddy.
He adopted you.
Well, he had no choice.
You adopted him. Let me put it that way. Pete Peterson died 5 years later. Hana spent a week with him during his final illness. What's your relationship now?
She's my big sister.
Exactly. And he better listen.
To his big sister.
Yeah.
From the past, nobody survived, so I have my family. I am so lucky.
And she was about to get even luckier.
I had found out that it was the 11th Armored Division that had liberated Mauthausen.
Eva, whose mother had raised her in the UK, reached out to the liberators a few years after Hana had, sending a picture of her mother and 3 generations of descendants. The photo appeared on the cover of the division's next newsletter.
I opened this magazine and I said to my mother, "You're not going to believe this. There was Hana's story."
Another baby.
Another baby. Up to that point, my mother had always thought that we were the only ones.
So she had no idea
No.
about these other 2.
No idea.
The 2 babies spoke and made plans to meet just after their 65th birthdays at the Mauthausen camp, now a preserved memorial where the anniversary of liberation would be celebrated. And that's where baby number 3 comes in. That same spring, Mark's son Charlie was struggling to find a 65th birthday present for his dad.
Yeah, he's very hard to shop for. So I thought maybe I'll do some research, see if I can find somebody who has a story. It must have been really miraculous to have a baby in a concentration camp.
A Google search brought him to the website of the 11th Armored Division, where he saw Eva's family photo and story.
And I looked at the story, and it was everything I'd ever heard from my grandmother. Everything matched up. It was the labor camp in Freiburg that the mother hid the pregnancy, that they had run out of gas. The dates, everything lined up, and I couldn't believe it.
The website's administrator connected him to Eva and Hana within an hour.
Hana was in San Francisco and wrote me back immediately.
Oh my gosh.
And said, "This is incredible. We're meeting for the first time in 2 weeks at the camp. So it's too bad you're just finding us now." And I thought, too bad nothing. This is great.
We're coming.
First thing he said, first thing out of his mouth that I heard was, "Would you like to go to Austria with me around the time of your birthday?" My mind is, one of my kids wants to spend a bunch of time with me? Sure, yeah, why not? Yeah. I'm there.
And that's how the 3 babies met for the first time in May 2010.
We spent the whole of the Saturday in one cafe talking, laughing and crying and talking about our mothers and comparing and contrasting their 3 stories.
Does your mother do this? Does your mother do that?
And we were all incredulous, absolutely incredulous.
It was like we've known each other all this time, and we just had to get caught up on what's happened for the last 65 years.
Hell of a birthday present.
It was the best birthday present I ever got.
The next year I was like, I'm just getting you a gift certificate.
That year, at age 65, they marched in the annual commemoration at Mauthausen. This past year, at 80, they marched again at the special 80th anniversary celebration, where thousands came from all over the world to remember the prisoners who worked and died here and their liberators.
The U.S. delegation.
Brian Peterson made the trip to honor his father, while the son of the U.S. sergeant who led his soldiers into the camp played taps. And while the babies were far too young to have their own memories, they told us inside one of the still-standing barracks that they couldn't help but sense the presence of their mothers. What are you feeling in this place? Do you carry her emotions with you?
All I am thinking about is, I've been here before. I've been here before. I have been here before. But I left.
At all the 80th anniversary commemorations, like this concert in Vienna, the three babies were celebrated guests of honor.
Happy birthday!
Quite the journey from how their lives began. How would you describe this relationship?
It's one of siblings.
That's
and I'm
right.
very glad to have siblings.
We found each other. We should have been together from day one.
You certainly, and your mothers absolutely, were marked for death. You were supposed to be annihilated.
My mother occasionally would say, and in the end, we won.
Because you all survived.
And we have families.
How many grandchildren?
I have 4.
I have 2.
I have 5 grandchildren.
And their mothers lived to be 96, 90, and 84. The lines go on.
Life goes on. Let's live.
Lord be praised.
L'chaim.
To our life and to our mothers.
To our mothers.
Our strong
mothers.
mothers.
Yes.